If you have ever given your all and wondered if anyone noticed, there is something here for you. Sometimes, the deepest acts of love are not understood or even welcomed by those watching. But God sees every hidden offering, a truth that quietly changes everything. Let us walk a few steps into a home in Bethany where worship unfolds at the feet and head of Christ, and the air is thick with both fragrance and misunderstanding. One love pours out where others hold back. In the town of Bethany, close to the Passover, Jesus reclined at a table in the house of Simon the leper. John tells us, Mary took a pound of expensive ointment made from pure nard and anointed the feet of Jesus and wiped his feet with her hair. John 12:3. Matthew adds, a woman came up to him with an alabaster flask of very expensive ointment, and she poured it on his head as he reclined at table. Matthew 26:7. This was not the cautious, careful love of calculation. This was a love that poured out everything held in reserve, a devotion that shattered the flask and spilled the cost. The perfume was no everyday ointment. It was worth nearly a year's wages, perhaps a family heirloom, a future's hope. In Mary's act, we see the first truth. True devotion will never simply give from the margin, but from the depth, offering not what is left over, but what is most precious. Pause and search your heart. What ointment have you kept reserved, guarded from God? Is your offering to Christ a mere portion or everything in its time? To worship that breaks cultural barriers. In the culture of first-century Judea, it was not customary, even unacceptable, for a woman to enter a dining space where men feasted, especially to approach a well-known rabbi. But Mary crossed that invisible threshold. The disciples' surprise and rebuke speak to how disruptive her presence and action seemed. Matthew 26:8. She lets her hair down, a gesture that, in Jewish custom, was private and almost intimate, further showing her disregard for social conventions in favor of honoring her Lord. She is not motivated by spectacle, but surrender. Worship, at its most authentic, will sometimes walk across boundaries that tradition or propriety have built. It cares little for the watching eye and everything for the presence of the one being loved. Today, your own moments of worship may not look like anyone else's. Faithfulness sometimes appears foolish or even offensive to those who cannot see your devotion. Do you value the approval of Christ above the customs of people? 3. The costliness of sacrifice reveals the focus of our love. The value of the nard was not lost on those present. The disciples, led by Judas Iscariot, immediately ask, why this waste? For this could have been sold for a large sum and given to the poor. Matthew 26:8-9. John's account makes clear. He said this, not because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief, and having charge of the money bag, he used to help himself to what was put into it. John 12:6. Mary's willingness to pour out what could have secured comfort or recognition reveals where her heart's treasure truly lies. In worship, sacrifice always reveals the true object of our affection, not only to others, but to ourselves and to God. Is there a waste in your spiritual life, something that might seem unwise, even reckless, unless love compelled you? What comfort or status would you lay down if Jesus asked? 4. When criticism follows obedience. The room does not erupt in applause after her act. Rather, it fills with judgment. Some say, why this waste? As if there is a more sensible use for what Mary has done. But her story is repeated in every era. Authentic devotion often draws misunderstanding, even rebuke from those closest by. In both accounts, Jesus immediately steps in. Leave her alone. Why do you trouble her? She has done a beautiful thing to me. Matthew 26:10. In John, leave her alone so that she may keep it for the day of my burial. John 12:7. If your highest obedience has ever met with suspicion or criticism from friends, family, or the world, know that you stand among those who have loved Christ sincerely. The only applause that matters is his. Sometimes he will defend you now, sometimes only later, but he always sees. Have you felt silenced by criticism in your faithfulness? Let Christ's words be your shelter. She has done what she could. 5. The fragrance of devotion fills more than the room. John's Gospel adds a beautiful note. The house was filled with the fragrance of the perfume. John 12:3. What Mary poured out did not evaporate or merely touch Jesus. It changed the whole atmosphere, lingering on every guest, every corner. Sincere worship, especially when it costs us something, always impacts more than we perceive. The aroma of devotion cannot be contained. It blesses, convicts, and awakens souls far beyond the moment of its offering. Perhaps you have given in secret, or prayed when exhausted, or chosen love where none was returned. Know this: what is poured out to Jesus never remains hidden or wasted. The fragrance follows where you cannot see. Reflect here. What has your devotion changed, not only in you, but around you? Whose life, whose atmosphere has been marked by your quiet love for Christ? 6. Jesus recognizes and interprets the heart, not just the action. As others grumble, Jesus provides a surprising interpretation of Mary's act. She has done it to prepare me for burial. Matthew 26:12. Whether Mary understood this fully is not told. What is clear? Jesus receives the deepest intent behind the act, even when neither she nor others fully comprehend it. God is never confused about your motives. Even if your actions are misunderstood, your heart's cry is known. Christ reads the underlying language of faith, grief, or hope written into every act of obedience. What hidden sacrifices have you made out of love for God? Rest. He sees, and he receives the true meaning. 7. Loving Christ supremely orders all other loves. In his defense of Mary, Jesus responds to the accusation regarding the poor. The poor you always have with you, but you do not always have me. John 12:8. This is not a dismissal of compassion or service. The law and prophets repeatedly command care for the poor. Rather, Jesus is affirming that love for him must hold the throne from which all other loves flow healthily. When Christ is first, our generosity and justice toward others grow richer. A moment will always come when you must choose whom to please, whom to serve, whose opinion weighs heaviest. Mary on this night chose Jesus. It shaped all else. Ask yourself quietly, do I serve or even do charity for Christ or for praise? Is my love for Christ the origin of my compassion, or has it become a cover for something else? 8. Undone at the feet and head of Christ. The vulnerability of adoration. Mary's devotion is marked by profound vulnerability. She not only anoints Jesus' head as a king, but also, according to John, his feet, wiping them with her unbound hair. In a world where dignity was guarded and women's public conduct watched, this was a humility that risked shame. True love and worship disarm us. They strip us of self-consciousness, appearance, and pride. At the feet and head of Jesus, we are both safe and exposed, laid open, yet accepted. Where do you keep yourself guarded, even in God's presence? Is there a part of you afraid to bring your true, unfigured affection to Christ? Mary shows us. At his table, the soul may be both totally vulnerable and finally whole. 9. Preparation, worship that aligns with God's mysterious will. Jesus links the woman's act with a purpose neither the disciples nor the observers would typically see. In pouring this ointment on my body, she has done it to prepare me for burial. Matthew 26:12. While the disciples were anticipating a Messiah of victory, Mary's act unknowingly points toward Christ's coming death. There is mystery here. Authentic worship so often aligns us with God's greater plan, even when we do not understand. Our prayers, our gifts, our sacrifices may have a meaning in heaven far deeper than we intend. In your life, have you ever obeyed God without seeing the full purpose, only later to discover the weight of that obedience? Trust that God weaves your love into his redemptive story in ways beyond your vision. 10. Immortalized. The legacy of secret service. In these moments, Jesus says something profound. Truly, I say to you, wherever this gospel is proclaimed in the whole world, what she has done will also be told in memory of her. Matthew 26:13. The world forgets most acts of devotion. The service of the humble rarely makes history's record. But Christ delights to memorialize those whose love is real, scattering reward not according to visibility, but faithfulness. By name or otherwise, the legacy of this woman's act is granted eternal remembrance wherever Christ is preached. You may never be publicly recognized for your love or sacrifice, but every cup of cold water, every hidden offering, is written in God's story forever. What legacy are you leaving? Not in the eyes of people, but in the heart of God. What will Christ remember of your daily service, your unseen acts of costly love? 11. Courage to serve in the shadows. Mary's servanthood is, in the world's eyes, unseen. She is uninvited, disregarded, and only remembered because Christ chooses to remember. Yet what is overlooked by men is precious to God. The scriptures reveal God's pattern. He sees in secret. The Father who observes the secret place, Matthew 6:4, rewards in his timing those who serve without applause. Oftentimes, the greatest acts of service, encouragement, prayer, and giving are performed out of sight and at a cost. Such offering is the substance of the kingdom. Where is Christ calling you to serve, knowing that no one but he may see? Can you let go of needing others to notice, instead finding rest in the gaze of your Savior? 12. Foreshadowed suffering, loving amidst approaching darkness. Bethany is just days from Jerusalem, days from the cross. Mary's act takes place in a moment shadowed by threat, betrayal, and coming violence. Her worship does not change the storm. It prepares her Lord for it and aligns her with the suffering servant. Sometimes our acts of love do not prevent coming suffering, but they participate in God's redemptive heart within it. There is a sobering sweetness in loving Christ as darkness draws near, not to prevent pain, but to be near him in it. Are you willing to offer love, not for outcome, but for nearness itself? To stand beside Christ, and not merely behind your hopes for what he might do? 13. The example for every disciple. Do what you can. Jesus says a simple, liberating word. She has done what she could. Mark 14:8, echoing Matthew 26:13's spirit. Mary is not rebuked for not doing more, for not doing what others expected. She did what she could, with what she had, in the time she was given. God does not measure our devotion by comparison, but by faithfulness. One's small gift, if done in love, is beautiful in His sight. Do what you can, not what you wish you could. Be faithful with the oil entrusted to you in the place where God has planted you. 14. The resurrection of costly love. In the timeline of the Gospels, the fragrance Mary poured out may have endured even as Jesus hung upon the cross, reminding him, and perhaps others, of one soul's extravagant love. Love given to Christ is never truly lost, never unrewarded. It is resurrected, remembered, and multiplied in ways we cannot predict. What might lay on the altar of your devotion, waiting for the touch of Christ's resurrection? What offering can you make, trusting that God brings beauty from every self-giving act? As our time in this sacred narrative draws to a close, let quiet reflection settle over your heart. The world often calculates, weighs cost, and applauds only the visible. But in the spiritual economy of Christ, it is the costly, unseen offering, the heart poured out, that is immortalized. Perhaps what looks like waste to the world is the very fragrance that fills the house of God. Perhaps what is unnoticed by many is held eternally in the heart of Christ. Consider the paradox. What the world calls foolish obedience, Christ calls beautiful. Where many saw extravagance, Jesus declared preparation for the highest purpose. A burial, yes, but one that gives way to resurrection. The table that bore perfume now remembers an offering that anticipated both death and immortal love. So here is the invitation. In the quietness of your own heart, what do you long to pour out at the feet and upon the head of Jesus? What costly devotion waits unspent, waiting not for understanding, but for love to act? Let go of needing others to see or approve, or even to understand your offering. Yield your carefully held ointment, your time, your reputation, your plans. Place them in the hands of the one who treasures what others overlook. Rest in the assurance that every quiet obedience, every act of worship known only to God, fills the house with unseen fragrance and points to the hope beyond the cross. If these truths have stirred something within you, linger here in prayerful silence. If you wish, share your own reflections in the comments. What has God taught you about love, sacrifice, or hidden servanthood? And if your soul hungers for more scriptural wisdom, subscribe and walk with us on this journey through the Word. May the peace of Christ keep your heart as you pour out your love in unseen places. May He remember you as He remembered Mary of Bethany, and may every fragrance of devotion endure in the presence of God forever. Amen.